Anyway, hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here for another Tech Trailblazers Judges on Fire podcast. My name is Rose Ross, and I'm the Chief Trailblazer founder of the awards. And I'm delighted to be here with Andrew Gomarsall, who is one of our judges in sustainability. He's also, if people are followers of international rugby or even rugby in the UK, would also recognise him for his 16-year career as a scrum half. Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm really good. And thanks for that intro, Rose, because you actually pronounced my surname correctly, which is very unusual. So well done.
That's good. That's good. I'll try and do it again at the end. I can't make any promises, but as they say, the first one was a try, and I actually scored. So that's great.
You nailed it.
I have. And I've also found out what scrum half is. So for people who are not familiar with rugby, this is part of your remit is to receive the ball from the back of the scrum, hence the name. But you also acted in your career as the interface, the communicator between the forwards and the backs. So a very pivotal role. So, yes, 16 years and a World Cup and a World Cup final. So not too shabby. And obviously, the league. I think there's a few, of course, a celebration there. So congratulations on that. What do you feel has been an important part? Because obviously you went to university, you were at Oxford Brookes, you did marketing and tourism there. And it felt like you also were juggling a professional rugby career at the same time. So that would have been quite full on with training and obviously the studying at the same time. So from your career, your earlier career in rugby, and I know you still play and I know you do a lot of stuff on charity as well. So I'd quite like to talk a little bit about that too. But obviously, Sir Clive Woodward has been seen very much as the inspiration, a very inspiring coach who obviously led the team, very successfully in international rugby. From your time from the age of 6 when you started playing rugby to obviously getting to the pinnacle and winning the World Cup, what are the skills that you learned from people like Clive, from your earlier mentors and coaches and your team members? What things do you find really useful now for you? What were you able to transfer into your new career as Executive Chairman of N2S?
I guess, how long have you got?
I'll keep the cameras rolling for as long as you'd like.
There's so much. I mean, first and foremost, I got into the game because it was an amateur game. It wasn't because it was professional. It only turned professional in 1996. So I was blessed with the fact that I had a family that were very keen rugby followers and supporters. And, my dad actually, who is a huge mentor and inspiration to me, is, he started me off playing mini rugby. In fact, when we turned up to one area in Oxfordshire called Bicester, known for the village there, the shopping village, which used to be, I think my dad's last game was on one of those fields that now Bicester Village is on. But we turned up and there was no mini rugby. There was no rugby at all. So 2 other dads and my father, Jack, started Bicester Mini Rugby Club to now 250, 300 children on Sundays playing. So it was kind of written in the DNA, the sports and just the values that rugby at that time brought when it was an amateur game. It was all about manners. You called the refs, sir. There was rules, but it was pretty combative and violent game. So you had to look after yourself. And so there was loads in there. And I sort of have spoken to my dad about it. Is kind of, I knew at a young age I wasn't very good. Everyone sort of thinks, oh, you're just naturally talented and you're going to make it. I knew at a young age I wasn't very good and I didn't really understand the rules, and, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't tackle. Most of the players will say, at the end of your career, you couldn't tackle. But I knew, I just found a way to learn of really, really good people to teach myself as well. But, and it was all built on, you're not very good, you're failing, you're not making teams, all of that sort of stuff. So I kind of had this inner resilience and inner comeback in me from a very early age, never to take no as the final answer. It sort of then progressed to being a good player. And I sort of said to my dad, when do you think I was going to be any good? And he said, well, the kids started passing you the ball. He said, that's when I knew there was a sort of turning point. So I sort of grew up through all of that, had a dream, a ridiculous dream of, I want to play for my country and play for England. We used to watch the Five Nations as it was back in the day on grandstands, that was a big deal. And then Dad took me with some Welsh friends, actually. So it was England versus Wales, took me to a game, and I'll never forget that. The passion and the rivalry at Twickenham. And, that's, I think at that point, I just wanted to be a ball boy. I wanted to be next, on the pitch, with everyone else. And we used to play in the car parks. Now they're all concreted, with the entertainment outside. So it's kind of, as a young lad growing up, you think, I'd like to do that. And you never really think that it's going to happen, but it did. And that was the sort of start of my career, really, is suddenly you had to decide what you were doing when you left school. I decided to go and play for a club called Wasps, who have had a real struggle recently and right now, and are trying to make their way back. And I'm still communicating with those players that I went on tour with 30 years ago, which is unreal. I mean, it's our anniversary this year of a tour to Canada that we went on, which, I've just been on WhatsApp today finalizing with the guys the dates. And that just shows that how the values and how the friendships still exist 30 years ago. And I can't wait for that moment to get back together. We've all gone our different ways. But when I went to Wasps, it was all about the people. That was the main thing, and it's never changed. The club's in a really, really difficult, precarious position right now. But a lot of my friends that I grew up playing rugby with are trying to save it, which is just remarkable and amazing and inspiring. And then the game went professional. But at that time, I was deciding where I was going to go to university, and the guys on the trip, there's 4 of them. Yeah, they said, come to Oxford Brookes University. We can share a car, go to training. And that was Tuesday, Thursday night. And it went from there. I chose to go to Oxford Brookes. I had 4 years there. I started, I thought, because there was a very good link and it was amateur with the kind of property world, I thought it's a good idea to do chartered surveying. And so I'll go and learn estate management. It wasn't for me, unfortunately. So that year I changed to do marketing management and tourism, and knew that it was probably going to go professional, so that I needed a flexible degree, not a very stringent and tough degree. I needed a degree that would be flexible dependent on where my career was going, having had no idea what a professional game and professional training looked like. So that's when I decided to go there, and I had a ball for 4 years, as well as playing for my country. And in fact, I had an exam on one Saturday, and it was England Wales at Cardiff Arms Park at the time in the Five Nations. And I said to the dean of the university, I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't take this exam. And they looked horrified at me. And I said, I'm actually been selected to play for my country. They said, what sport? And I said, rugby. And they said, have you got any proof of this? I had to, there was no internet, so I had to then provide the letter, because we were invited to play for our country through a letter, and I gave them the letter, and they said, well done. We'll have to look at this. So they let me take the exam on the Monday, which was very, very kind of them. And I promised not to cheat and look at, know what the answer was. I think even if I had, it wouldn't have got any greater, because I was just so focused on the rugby. So yeah, that was the kind of start of it all, really. And I learned, through people and meeting different coaches, different, through the network of rugby and through the network of my dad's business, I got to meet so many wonderful people who would have died to have done what I was doing and gave me such incredible advice.
Fantastic, fantastic. And talking of your dad, yeah, I noticed that he got a Lifetime Achievement Award for 56 years from the British Metal Recycling Association. So congratulations to your dad on that. So obviously, you know, this side of the business. So this takes us on, and you mentioned values, and I noticed on the N2S website, there's 4 words that are put there: trust, honesty, openness, and respect. And I'm sure that reflects, you know, your upbringing and your rugby, you know, ethos, I suppose. And that's great to hear. And I suppose that leads in, you mentioned great people, and I know that you spent some time at the Palace back in November with King Charles, and very topical because obviously it's his coronation next weekend. But let's sort of scroll forward a little bit and look at obviously the transition from professional rugby and then into, you know, working in the family business. And obviously, you know, your father's got an awful lot of experience in this area, and you didn't get a 56-year lifetime achievement, but unless you've got at least racked up 56 years. So is that something, was that a natural progression for you to go into N2S or network to suppliers as it was?
Yeah, 100%. It felt extraordinarily natural. And I was blessed and lucky that was the case. That wasn't kind of my first choice. I was very strong in the fact that I wanted to make my own way and do something very different. And while I was still playing, my advice to every single player is you have a lot of time off and time out, and transition is really, really challenging. It's either your choice or to stop, or it happens to you through injury, or now it's so competitive that you don't get a contract. So I didn't look at it as a worry. I looked at it as exciting. You know, what next? Knowing full well that probably my career would be a lot longer than my rugby career and my professional career. So I was really excited about it. I wasn't exactly sure what it was going to look like, but the first business I got involved with actually while I was still playing, and I was at Harlequins at the time, and it helped me actually be a better professional by learning off being part of a board of a startup business. I got to see some really experienced businessmen and entrepreneurs and see another side that I'd never seen necessarily. And it taught me to go back into rugby and just gave me confidence and had a stronger perspective on how professional we should be. So I spent a lot of time working out but also working as well. So a lot of downtime, you have off season. I was still at that time playing for England, but I still wanted to push myself to be a better professional, as well as figure out what I was going to do next. The biggest lesson I learned there was trust. And there was when that stopped, it was an easy transition to go and work for your father and with your father. When he asked me to be a director and a shareholder, you know, that was a moment in time that I won't forget, and, you know, truly blessed to be able to take it forward. So that was amazing to be able to do that. I wasn't convinced to start with, but I'm so pleased that I did do it. Jack said to me, so this is going to be, you know, it was N2S was a very small business at that time. And it was 20 years old last year, and you know, he just said this will be your best lesson ever in life to learn, you know, the real nuts and bolts of a small business. So my ambition and vision was always to take it to a much bigger business, and thankfully today we're on that journey, and we're in that growth phase. So I was really, really lucky, I guess. But you know, a lot of people say you make your own luck as well, and I think I did.
They do, and I think you're quite good at making your own luck. So long may that continue. So let's look at what N2S does. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. Now, so from your website, I see that we are at present generating 57 million tons of electronic or e-waste. So that's
quite a lot, isn't it?
Fair amount. And by 20, I mean, obviously that's globally, not us personally, us too. I think I couldn't manage a whole million.
I'm pretty good, to be honest, but yeah.
Exactly. But that's going to leap up by 2050 based on predictions now to 120 million. And obviously, we all know that there is almost an insatiable desire for new technology, but the Earth's resources, I come from Cornwall, so I know all about, the reopening of mines, because suddenly it's worth the effort to, be able to get lithium out of the ground and such like. But the reality of it is, and we've all been, recycling our bottles for a long time, but recycling technology is not a new concept, because obviously you've been running a business for 20 years that does exactly that. But what are you finding the appetite for this is now, as people are under more and more pressure to reduce their carbon footprint as businesses as well as us as individuals?
Yeah, it's a really, when I first came into the business, I retired in 2010, so sort of 13th, 14th year now. I spent a long time trying to position ourselves and understand, what industry vertical we actually sat in, and also what value we created to our customers. And it took a long time. It took a while. And one of the reasons is the lack of data is frightening. And now we sit here in a digital world, even on paper, it was poor. And now digitally, it's not progressed. And that's what hopefully a digital economy can do in our industry. So the lack of data for me was really, really worrying. So I sort of became quite quietly obsessed with data and sort of pushing my business to create more data and make it valuable to the customer base. There's an element that I wanted the customers to care. I understood that the relevancy was very low to certain people. In some organizations, there wasn't even anyone responsible. They sort of got it. They got a responsibility by default. It was kind of, you're the last here, and this is sat on your desk, so you deal with it. So there was a real lack of skills and knowledge based. And so for me, I realized at that point, I need to be the educator, but also B, the innovator. Because interestingly enough, the BMRA mentioned the award that Jack received. When the BMRA came to see our innovation, they were really complimentary in saying that, we are niche in technology. We come as a lot of devices, if you like, the fridge freezers, white goods, white products, to the tech element, and tech forms a small part, but a growing part. So we're very niche in the regards to technology. But I could see that we needed to really up our own game in terms of that reporting, but also government legislation hadn't really, the BMRA said they'd never seen innovation like it. And, innovation is really important to British business. But if the customer's not asking for it and we're not driving it, there's a real sort of chicken and egg. And then therefore the government, the lack of data and the lack of understanding, because effectively what the UK do is ship it. So we don't see a problem, but we create a problem in other countries. I can use an example in plastics. So the POPs, which is persistent organic pollutants, So those are they are in printers and some devices. So the old fashioned monitors. These plastics, unfortunately, don't have a life cycle to reuse and have to be disposed of, by burning. And so we were shipping to China, and China eventually said, we can't cope anymore. So we have to stop. And therefore, guess what happens is the easy fix is, we'll put it in landfill. Well, that's going backwards. That's not going forwards. You've kind of gone from landfill methane to incineration, pollution, air pollution. We're using heat and acids. So we actually went backwards because of that, to put it in landfill. So that was massively worrying that we weren't able to find something innovative. And that's sort of 10 years ago. That's where we set our stall out on our mission to find a solution. So in effect, we are collaborating now. So that's where it's a shift change. When you're a supplier in a business, you're sort of told what to do, and you must adhere to these rules. We're actually, because of sustainability, we are collaborating with companies now to ensure sustainability, to enhance security, because I still think there are massive companies that are losing devices. They don't know where they are and what's happened to them, and supply chains aren't being managed effectively enough. So security is a huge challenge. And therefore, then within the ESG compliance at sort of every stage of that life cycle, I found it very frustrating that the people that sell the technology, that the outbound journey didn't connect with the inbound journey. Yeah. And that, to me, is the start point of a circular economy. And today we've gone backwards. So we were 9% circular. We've gone backwards in the UK to 7% circularity. So actually, again, another challenge is that we're not collaborating well enough and communicating within or in supply chains for our customers. So there's a lot of change needed and a lot to be done. And we've gone backwards, and it's a huge opportunity. I mean, absolutely monstrous opportunity. And I haven't even gone to the depth of what circular economy and that sustainability will mean to the climate change challenge that we're actually making grow in technology terms.
So when you talk about the technology vendors, you're talking about people who produce the hardware.
Correct.
And they're saying, here you go, Mr. Customer, here are flashing lights, servers, knock yourself out. But we will try and sell you another refresh in 3 years' time, or maybe 2 if we can get away with it.
Yeah.
But then they're not saying, and we will help you recycle it responsibly. So what you're saying, there's an opportunity for them not just to say, here's some new technology, but we'll also take the other stuff away and ensure that it goes back into the digital food chain, so to speak.
Correct. 100%. Some companies have done that. There is producer compliance schemes. They are effectively kind of made to do it, but they do it. When you look at figures, it's so low. It's under 10%. We're taking back technology.
Yeah.
And don't forget, a customer isn't a singular vendor, manufacturer. They are a multitude, 200 plus, vendors potentially in some organizations when you look at their whole remit of purchasing. So to just solutionize that is really challenging. And a lot of them deal with the scale, don't have in country and don't have any reporting mechanisms. So we're actually, you're doing it in the quiet and silent. So when a company then goes to assess, who are they assessing? What are they assessing? And it just doesn't happen. So that is a real challenge. And if the reason we've accelerated our investment is because we know within the greenhouse gas protocol and scope 3 emissions that will now be mandatory to report on, you have to look at your entire supply chain. And what companies will be doing is, where are the quick wins? And that's obvious. That's the best thing to do right now, is the quick wins. And technology will provide one of the greatest elements of carbon emissions through the purchase of tech, for the big global companies. So when we're talking about joining up outbound and inbound journeys of tech, we also have to connect data to those as well, so that from our embodied carbon emission point of view, so that is, we're digging stuff up to make a product and then we're using it. That data is out there in the marketplace, but we still, as companies, don't report on it, let alone then what happens afterwards and what's next. So we're sort of a million miles away from the data, but we also need the solutions. What circular economy is supposed to do is challenge the design of product for the future, and we're still not circular enough. So the ease of disassembly is still not there. We're trying to take, in the most effective way, products apart, and it's so difficult.
Right. So what you're saying that let's look at the long-term goal is to produce products that you can easily extract those resources back out from.
Correct. So modular design, that if something goes wrong with it, it's like this. There's an example here, a piece of technology that's now faulty. I still can keep this. I replace that. We just go around replacing the device and throwing stuff in the bin. We're still doing it today. And yet that's easy to put on. I can put that on like that, but how easy is technology to replace? It's not that easy. And the design of those, so if something goes wrong and it's beyond economic repair, it's sent off and shredded and burnt. That can't be a future solution. So, one element of our business will take care of that, but by pushing circular economy / sustainability, we are hopefully educating the marketplace to understand that they need to stand up and say, this isn't good enough. Whichever vendor that they're buying off, where are you when you're procuring? Where are you in your design, and how circular are you? And start to really push those companies into real investment, because at the moment there is a real lack of investment for that reason. So there's a long way to go. I personally am championing and I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just saying we need to all talk about it. The customer needs to drive it. We need to educate the customer, and we need to help them get on that journey. So if we're not reporting and joining this up, then we're never going to progress. And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to do, but it needs to be done, and the customer needs to demand it.
So obviously you guys are focused on the UK market. Obviously this is a global issue. So it feels like what you're doing there is potentially a blueprint for what could be replicated elsewhere, which would be
100%. 100%.
If you can make that effort. I saw reported probably about a month or so ago about net zero strategy from the government. And I think there's a call on government departments to be carbon neutral by 2030. I may be totally wrong with that, but and the reporting was that would encourage government departments to go into the cloud. And I thought, that feels a little bit like you're just pushing the problem away. And I'm not saying obviously cloud services, you can consolidate, you are sharing hardware. So there could be a positive impact. I'm not saying that. But obviously there's already a lot of technology, and we're almost inviting them to say, well, if that's the case, please make sure that if you do move into the cloud, what you're getting rid of, you recycle or resell. Because otherwise you're kind of doing a short-term fix, but you've then just pushed some other issues to the side.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and obviously you're going to speak with regards to your experience in the UK, but do you think government fully understand the opportunities and what needs to be done? Are they consulting you, for example, are the people?
Yeah, so we're really grateful that we were able to, through Innovate UK, gain funding and so a grant to actually solve a problem, which is amazing. But that's just the start of it, and there was a real sort of lack of communication, and that's always the worry in a very tough economic world that we find ourselves in. The lack of connection to something that is the future and the green, and trying to work within frameworks that are sort of built in the 1900s. And that's one of the challenges that we are pushing innovation. I'm proud to be made in Britain, and with Brexit, and I want to drive this as a positive for the UK. We seem to be very comfortable with doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results, and that's one of the frustrations we have. But I think it's this collaboration piece that we need to communicate so much better to within the supply chains, and UK gov seems to just outsource a lot to big companies, and they are so cumbersome and difficult to work with. So the messages are all there. Work with UK smaller SME businesses, and everyone's going, yeah, we're going to work with these guys. And then nothing happens because of their own internal challenges, number one. And then number two, the cumbersome nature and the lack of speed and agility to change the requirements to fit for the future. So I get pushed away from government the whole time. We're in contract. It's long term. That's it. So the connection point from somebody's role it is to the innovators is miles away. So again, you have to find people that actually care and want to make a difference and change. And I guess for government, it's so big and so large that is difficult. It takes time. Unfortunately, we don't have very much time. So when things are getting, so worth, and it is not technology's fault. Don't get me wrong, but we are a solution and a driver to support. So there's a lot of good to be done and had, and I think it's a mix of public sector government as well as large enterprise business. It's sharing best practice, and almost public sector becoming more enterprise, and enterprise being complemented by the way the public sector works, the best bits being shared. And that's something that we're looking at and have the ability to do. They are very different languages and different people, right? They just are. So all in all, it's a massive challenge. And I don't think at the top they really get it and understand it. And that's a lack of education and sort of push from those stakeholders that are involved. And we used to call it CSR. Now it's ESG. And there's a lot of good to be done out of this. And I think those connection points need to be enhanced. Again, you're seeing a lot more sustainability people. You're seeing a lot more people that are being employed that is partly their role as well. They might be an infrastructure manager, but suddenly they've got sustainability written into it. There are some companies that are really pushing the boundaries and then really investing in and seeing the future. And it comes back to, for me, then therefore, it's people and the culture. And that's where you start. When we started from, you asking me about rugby, and I came from if you didn't have the culture, you were never ever going to progress. You were never going to be top of the league if you didn't sort out the culture. And I think that's an element that we need to change. So how do we change that? We change that with good consultancy that costs money, unfortunately, so it's a huge investment. But it's bringing those people that are internal in government departments as well as enterprise. It's educating and getting them to understand, first and foremost, from a tech point of view, you don't know where it is, what you've got. That's a real fundamental challenge or problem to then assess, be sustainable and transform and reduce and decarbonize. So reduce your carbon emissions. If you don't know the fundamental of what you've got and where it is, we're going to struggle. And what I found with the cloud conversation is location does actually matter. So when we say it's in the cloud, where is it in the cloud? It's very different to have something in the cloud that's in Scotland to something that's in London. It is 70 times different in terms of difference from a climate change point of view. Fact. And yet some technology leaders that we speak to have no idea how important location was for the renewable power situation.
Oh, because Scotland has a lot more of that.
Correct.
And obviously London has nothing.
Correct. Well, we'll get some, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So location is huge and it does matter. And there are connotations around that. But that's the start of it for us, is that sort of digital sustainability consultancy to help. And the channel and the vendors and the resellers are starting to look at this as a value creation, to shape their future, but also, help the customers understand. Knowing what you've got, where it is, is really important to us because we're a logistics business as well as a circular economy business. We need to know where it is. So when you've turned it off, don't just leave it. I mean, lights are still green and the power, even the power situation, the costs going up isn't necessarily driving people to connect the dots, and to decommission and turn off and get rid. There are other things that are more important, like I've got a co-location and it's costing me £1 million a month. I better turn it off and get it out, and then I can stop paying £1 million a month. They don't understand the digital impact at the start point, which is also significant. So legislation and policy at government level will change that once they start to record. There's the opportunity for a carbon tax. So I think things like that will help and push businesses to know more information and detail of what they got, where it is, and how much power it's actually truly drawing. When we've got that, then we're sort of starting on the circular economy journey at that point. For me, the stuff that we're doing is innovating, and then when they're there and ready, we're there ready and waiting. That makes sense.
Absolutely. So one of your innovations spun out into Bioscope Tech last year.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about bio-leaching and how that's bringing about urban mining, because I find this whole concept fascinating. So I'm very, very curious to hear more about it, but please keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. We purposely make it mystical because we feel we're the furthest along, not just in the UK but in the world on this front. So we've taken a terminology and almost a process that naturally occurs in mining already. You can't patent bioleaching, for instance. This is a naturally occurring extraction by bacteria, and we had no idea the bacteria actually love metals. This type of bacteria. So the challenge we were trying to solve was to stop and reduce the need to burn, and also the ability to take components and precious metals off circuit boards, so printed circuit boards. The problem is the fact that when I'm talking about digital emissions, 70 to 90% of this text, I've got an iPhone here, 70 to 90% of its embodied carbon emission is actually in the circuit boards in the devices. Yeah. If you imagine a server and a switch, those have got massive circuit boards in. And that is 70 to 90% of the emissions are in those. It's not the sort of steel carcass and the aluminium surrounding. It's totally in the circuit board. And we've been building circuit boards using fiberglass base and embedding the precious metals, the rare earths into the fiberglass, as well as sticking on top components there and chips to obviously make technology work. And that is not only the challenge to almost take the laptop apart, take the server apart, it's also a challenge to get to that circuit board. And we're talking about hard drives as well that have circuit boards on them. All of this stuff is really difficult to disassemble and extract. And the problem is the fiberglass, because that is landfilled material from many years ago. The circular economy is all around reusing every single material base to that technology. So we are now finding homes for the plastic. We take cable as well, so we granulate the cable, so we get plastic and pure copper. We did over 270 tons of copper last year for our customer BT. And that was the equivalent of avoidance of 30,000 tons of ore. So the 30,000 tons of ore will have natural bacteria extracting critical raw materials. We took that process and used it on the return journey of product. And so we're doing it at room temperature. So no 1,000-degree burning. We're not using acids. Nacre regia is the worst acid, the most toxic of acids. So there's no harm to people and the planet. And so effectively, we are trying to get that circuit board as clean as possible of precious metals, rare earth metals, and noble metals without the fiberglass, ceramics, and plastics. And then we will bioleach the metals into, so we've created a dust. And we want to extract all of those metals and put them into solutions so that we can reuse them back into the market of producing renewable green products for the future. And if you look at the future cable that goes in, we're talking this size of cable that goes to the wind farms for transporting the electricity back to the battery so that we can store it. That is full of copper. And the spike in copper demand is one element of the future of building a green world. There are many others. Batteries obviously are huge, but we've gone about, this is not technology's fault, but we've gone about building cars with batteries that are very difficult to recycle. So we knew about circular economy, so we should have built these cars so they're easier to disassemble and easier to recycle the batteries. They are a real challenge and problem, and that's something that we'll deal with in the future. At the moment, we're focused on the technology and the printed circuit boards, the PCBs as we call them. So that is our new solution. We'll be in the summer. We'll be we built for scale. So we are going to be we're reporting, the aim was for a ton a day, but actually we're going to be greater. I'm not going to announce what it is exactly as of yet, but it will be greater than that with the plant that we built. So everything that we're building is bespoke machinery to get the product into the state so that the bacteria can then break down the metals. And all of the data that's coming from that and why and how we're so green is being collated and created at the moment. And then you look at the products that we're going to be recycling. Every single PCB is like a human being. They're all different, right? They've all got a different DNA.
Yeah.
So we've got a huge job. Everyone says, what do you get out? And say, well, the context is so vast and so big with particular vendors, with particular PCBs. The good news is the volume out there and the opportunity is still so big, right? I mean, it's just, so we're already thinking about now to nail it for the UK and then take it to world and globally in the different areas of where the mass and the majority of all this product will end up. So exciting days ahead, trying to grow and scale the N2S side of the business is a massive challenge and great opportunity, as well as the new innovation. And I never thought, I'm so proud because I never thought, N2S has grown and incredible people. Some people have been in the business the whole, life of N2S. And then the future innovation that's joined together but we're hiring scientists and biochemists. Just shows the kind of level that we've gone to, and that makes me really, really, really proud. And it was Jack's idea, my father's idea, to be able to take that forward. Obviously, it's huge for us. But my partners are obviously seeing the opportunity, how big this is, and that to me as well. I've got a great team that can kind of get us there, and that's what's happening right now. And a lot of mistakes will occur and happen, and we're going through those trials and tribulations right now. But I know every single customer and every single vendor will need this for the future. They just absolutely will. There is another solution out there that's far ahead and that can go to the scale that they're going to need.
Well, you're a man who knows a good team, right? So I have absolutely no concerns with regards to that. So let's because I know that, we're focused for the awards and reintroduce the sustainability section, the sustainable tech side of things. So for you, what kind of stuff will you be looking for in the entries that we see this year? I mean, it's unfortunate that you guys are a little bit too old to to submit yourself, but I guess
I'm used to that.
You give yourself 10 out of 10. So obviously, but what kind of things do you see will be interesting to see whether they shake through on our entrance in sustainable tech this year?
I think that one of the hardest things is kind of to show and prove that you're decarbonizing a problem, a challenge. So metrics are hugely valuable.
Right.
And so it's showing the challenging problem. Your solution is trying to solve that, but with stats and metrics aligned to how the future of the reporting, which is again very, very difficult because I find it very subjective right now, and we're able to manipulate the metrics and data to kind of solve our if we do have KPIs and if we do have challenges to reduce, we kind of tick those boxes. But that's the start. It's better to label than not to label. I find a lot of wishy-washy information, kind of the macro. We're here to be green with no data. It all sounds lovely marketing, but actually there needs to be meat on the bones. So I use my examples of the copper. We are extracting pure copper at 99.9% from double the amount of equipment. So we've reduced that down to the amount of copper. But what does that mean? And why is it circular? Why is it green? And we're able to use those embodied carbon metrics. And a lot of the world I find, which is a challenge, is we need to be shown to be decarbonizing, but some of it in the first instance is actually avoidance. So scope 4 emissions is something that even by SBTI, is the Science-Based Targets initiatives, they aren't allowing their customers that have signed up to the SBTI, they aren't allowing them to use avoidance. And I think avoidance is a good place to start. If you were going to make a decision on cloud, or you can start to use metrics around avoiding. And so we that from a mining term, we use that. So metrics and the reasons, whether it's avoiding, whether it's actually reducing, I think is really, really critical. It's hard when you're starting out because you've got no background and backdrop to the metrics. All I know is that from a macro climate change challenge, companies are using baseline figures pre-COVID, because obviously COVID, they were a lot lower. Nobody was traveling, as an example. So pre-COVID, they'll use 2017, 2018 metrics to show that they're decarbonizing. From a technology point of view, the challenge is because we're so late to the reporting element to this, whatever metrics we get, we're going to be having to add metrics to it. So it's going to get worse. So today, people aren't assessing, even the hyperscalers aren't even assessing their scope 3 today. Can you imagine? The scope 3 is 90%, 90+% of Microsoft's emissions are in scope 3. They are starting to report parts of that scope 3. But there are other cloud providers that aren't measuring even scope 3, and it can be 75 upwards % of their climate, of their emissions. So this is
so the public sector not necessarily be in the cloud. There's one day rail will be completed to its end.
Look, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying we need to have a sourcing element to be transparent with what we've reported on, and so it's better to label than not to label, but be really clear on your reporting and your labeling. And it's fine that it's only a 15th of this. There's 15 categories in scope 3 as an example. It's fine it's just a start and you're at 1 out of 15. Absolutely fine. But show some metrics that you're proving that you're going to be greener in the future. That's really my message.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well,
you're welcome.
What a fascinating conversation. I feel we should almost have a series. I think we've only literally scratched the surface.
We probably do. There's some amazing people out there that are so much more knowledgeable, and I feel sorry for the scientists that have been sort of banging the drum for so long and not being listened to. There are certain areas, but there are so many people. I think you could easily fill a series. There's so many good people out there that know and understand and have the experience of doing it. Some customers are just a bit fearful of sharing how well they've done. Ultimately,
that's going to be one of the next challenges, isn't it? Case studies of how people have
correct
around, because everybody knows that it has been a bit of a nightmare. Nobody's going to be totally glowing little, carbon neutral angel, because that's not the way business has worked. So
we need the circular economy inspiration. So we vendors are very good at inspiring their customers to buy the latest product that is just off the scale good, right? And it's going to reduce power and all that. They're very good at that. They need the story. They need the support and the help in the background of the story of circular economy. That will help. And the reason it isn't accelerating quite as much at the moment is it's not a requirement. And it's not necessarily embedded as a non-functional requirement in companies' sustainability, but it's coming. And that's the point. So it's exciting days ahead. But I think you could fill a series easily.
I'm going to look into that. So I just wanted to wrap up now. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure, Andy. I really, really hope we get an opportunity to revisit this. I have got a little idea about that I'll chat to you about after this. So this is Andy Gomarsall, who is an ex-England and professional rugby player. Well, retired, isn't it? Not ex. But you do still kick and carry the ball and throw the ball around from time to time for charity. Start on that, otherwise we'll definitely be here for another hour. And he's also our judge, joined us last year for sustainable tech. And so I really consider him and the organisation, his dad and the whole team there at N2S as trailblazers. So I'm absolutely delighted that you're able to join us this year again. So thank you for that. And just thank you guys for listening. I'm sure you have been enthralled. Very, very insightful and inspirational. But we do have challenges ahead. So we're looking forward to seeing some really innovative tech companies who are tackling this issue at the awards. So thank you for joining me and Andy for this Judges on Fire podcast. And we look forward to speaking with you guys soon when we open for entries on the 27th of June. Thank you, Andy.
Good luck, everyone.